In the heart of the desert, a blind woman is left alone as a bargaining chip, but no one imagines what happens when unknown footsteps break the night's silence. In a land where progress never bothered to arrive, there stands a town that seems to exist only to remind the living that time, when it wants to, knows how to be cruel. Here, in the heart of the Arizona Territory, houses lean on weathered wood, the ground refuses to let go of its dust, and people, when they speak at all, prefer whispers over bold words. It is in this forgotten corner that a woman, white, heavy-set, and blind, is offered like a coin of mockery. Sarah Beth Morrison sits on the splintered porch of the trading post, her hands folded in her lap, feeling the weight of every stare that passes by. The men of Copper Ridge have made their decision, and she knows it without needing to see their faces. At 28, she has become what they call a burden nobody wants to carry. A body that takes up space and eyes that see nothing. A living shame they plan to hand over as a trophy of humiliation. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and leave your like. Tell us which city you're watching from. Let's keep going. "She'll do," says Marshall Tucker, spitting tobacco juice into the dust. "Apache's been asking for a wife, and the council says we give him one. Keeps the peace, keeps him from raiding our cattle." The other men nod, their boots scraping against the wooden boards. Sarah Beth can hear the sound of their agreement, the way it settles heavy in the air like summer thunder that never breaks into rain. She has heard these conversations before, when they thought she was sleeping, when they thought her blindness made her deaf to their plans. "Joseph Running Bear won't know what hit him," laughs Deputy Morrison, her own cousin. "Blind woman for a savage seems about right." The words cut through her like winter wind through cotton, but Sarah Beth keeps her hands steady. She learned long ago that showing pain only gives them more ammunition. Instead, she listens to the sounds beyond their cruel laughter, the distant call of a red-tailed hawk, the whisper of wind through sagebrush, the soft padding of hooves on packed earth. Marshall Tucker clears his throat. "We'll take her out to the boundary stones tomorrow morning, leave her there with some supplies. If Running Bear wants her, he can have her. If not..." He doesn't finish the sentence, but Sarah Beth feels the shrug in his voice. That evening, as the sun painted the western sky in shades she could only remember, Sarah Beth sits alone in the boarding house room that has been her prison for 3 years. Since the fever took her sight and left her dependent on the charity of people who saw kindness as weakness, she has lived on the edges of a community that barely tolerates her existence. Mrs. Henderson, the boarding house keeper, brings her a plate of cold beans and hardtack. "I'm sorry, child," she whispers, setting the plate down with trembling hands. "If I could stop this, I would. But the council has decided, and going against them means losing everything." Sarah Beth nods, understanding more than Mrs. Henderson realizes. She has always known this day would come, when her usefulness would finally be outweighed by the cost of keeping her alive. The town of Copper Ridge operates on a simple principle. Everything and everyone must earn their place, and those who cannot contribute are expendable. Through the thin walls, she can hear the sounds of evening settling over the town. Children being called in for supper, horses whinnying in the livery stable, the distant sound of piano music from the saloon. These are the sounds of a community she has never truly belonged to, despite being born within 50 miles of this place. Her fingers trace the familiar outline of the small Bible her mother left her, its leather cover worn smooth by years of ill handling. Inside the front cover, her mother had written in careful script, "Sarah Beth, remember that the Lord sees what others cannot, and he loves what others fear to understand." The words had seemed like comfort once. Now they feel like prophecy. The night air carries the scent of sage and distant rain, promising storms that may never come. Sarah Beth lies on her narrow cot, listening to the sounds of Copper Ridge settling into another evening of false peace. Tomorrow, she will be taken beyond the boundary stones, left like an offering to a man they call Savage, in the hope that her sacrifice will buy them another season of safety. But something in the way the wind moves tonight tells her that the story they think they're writing is not the one that will unfold. In the darkness behind her sightless eyes, she feels a stirring that has nothing to do with fear and everything to do with the strange certainty that some journeys begin only when you're forced to leave everything familiar behind. The last thing she hears before sleep takes her is the distant sound of drumming, so faint it might be her own heartbeat, carrying a rhythm that speaks of patience, honor, and something the people of Copper Ridge have forgotten how to recognize. Tomorrow will bring change, but tonight, in the space between one breath and the next, Sarah Beth Morrison begins to understand that being given away might be the first step toward finding where she truly belongs. The wagon wheels creak against the hard-pan earth as they carry Sarah Beth toward the boundary stones, those weathered granite markers that separate the world she has known from the vast unknowing that stretches beyond. Marshal Tucker drives, while Deputy Morrison sits beside her in the wagon bed, his rifle across his knees like a barrier between duty and conscience. "Almost there," Tucker announces, his voice carrying relief that makes Sarah Beth's stomach tighten. She can smell his eagerness to be done with this business, to return to Copper Ridge and report that the Apache problem has been solved with minimal cost to their community. The morning sun beats down on her shoulders, and she can feel sweat gathering beneath the heavy wool dress Mrs. Henderson insisted she wear. "You'll want to look proper," the older woman had said while helping her dress, as if propriety mattered when you're being delivered like livestock to a man you've never met. They left her with a canvas bag containing 2 changes of clothing, a small sack of cornmeal, some dried beans, and the Bible that never leaves her side. Not enough to survive on for long. But then, survival was never the point of this transaction. The point was to demonstrate good faith, to show the Apache that Copper Ridge was willing to honor their agreements, even if the offering was less than generous. The wagon comes to a stop, and Sarah Beth can hear the silence that surrounds the boundary stones. No bird calls here, no rustle of small animals in the brush. Even the wind seems to hold its breath in this place where 2 worlds meet but do not touch. "This is it," Tucker says, climbing down from the driver's seat. "Time to go, Miss Morrison." Sarah Beth allows herself to be helped down from the wagon, her feet finding purchase on ground that feels different somehow, as if it belongs to no one and everyone at the same time. Deputy Morrison sets her bag beside her, and she can hear him step back quickly, as if her condition might be contagious. "You, just wait here," Tucker instructs unnecessarily. "Running Bear will come when he's ready. Until then, you stay put." The wagon wheels begin to turn again, carrying the men of Copper Ridge back to their safe, small world. Sarah Beth stands alone beside the boundary stones, listening to the sound of their retreat until even the dust they raised settles back to earth. The silence that follows is so complete it seems to have weight, pressing down on her shoulders like an invisible hand. Hours pass, marked only by the movement of the sun across her face and the slow progression of shadows she cannot see, but can feel in the changing temperature around her. She sits on her canvas bag, conserving her strength and trying not to think about what will happen if Joseph Running Bear decides she is not worth claiming. It is near midday when she first hears the hoofbeats, so soft they might be mistaken for her own pulse if she were not listening so carefully. The horse approaches at a walk, unhurried, and she can tell by the rhythm that the rider is in no rush to complete this transaction. When the hoofbeats stop, the silence returns, but now it feels different, inhabited. "You are the woman from Copper Ridge," says a voice, speaking English with the careful precision of someone for whom it is a second language. The voice is deeper than she expected, and there is something in its tone that surprises her, not anger or disappointment, but curiosity. Yes, she answers, unsure of what protocol governs this moment. I am Sarah Beth Morrison. I am Joseph. Running bear, he says, and she can hear him dismount, his boots touching the ground with barely a sound. They told me you were blind. Yes. They told me you were unwanted. The bluntness of the statement takes her breath away, but she forces herself to answer honestly. Yes, that too. She hears him move closer, his footsteps careful on the rocky ground. Why did they choose you? He asks, and there is something in the question that makes her think he genuinely wants to understand. Because they had to choose someone, and I was the most expendable. The word tastes bitter in her mouth, but it is the truth. Expendable, he repeats as if testing the word. This is how they see a woman who has survived 3 years without sight in a place that shows no mercy to weakness. The question catches her off guard. In all her years of being seen as a burden, no one has ever framed her survival as an accomplishment. She doesn't know how to respond, so she remains silent. Stand up, he says, not unkindly. Sarah Beth rises to her feet, feeling awkward and uncertain. She can sense him studying her, and she wonders what he sees. The heavy woman in the too warm dress, the pale skin that never sees enough sun, the eyes that look at nothing and see everything. Give me your hand, he says. She extends her right hand, and she feels his fingers touch hers, calloused and warm. His touch is gentle as he guides her hand to his face, letting her fingertips trace the high cheekbones, the strong jaw, the weathered skin that speaks of years spent under the open sky. I am 42 winters old, he tells her, as her hand maps the territory of his face. I have been alone for 8 years, since my wife and children were taken by the spotted sickness. The men of your town think they are giving me a gift, but they do not understand that I stopped believing in gifts long ago. Her hand falls away from his face, and she waits for him to continue. But I am here, he says, because sometimes what appears to be an ending is actually a beginning that no one expected. He steps back, and she can hear him picking up her canvas bag. Can you ride? He asks. I don't know. I haven't tried since I lost my sight. Then you will learn today. My horse is patient, and the distance is not far. She hears him leading the horse closer, feels the animal's breath warm against her cheek as Joseph guides her hand to the horse's neck. The mare is solid and calm under her touch, and something about the steady rhythm of the animal's breathing helps slow her racing heart. Her name is Starwalker, Joseph says. She has carried me safely for 7 years, and she will carry us both today. With his help, Sarah Beth manages to mount the horse, sitting behind Joseph as Starwalker begins to move. The motion is unfamiliar, but not unpleasant, and she finds herself gripping Joseph's shirt as they leave the boundary stones behind and head toward whatever waits in the distance. As they ride, she becomes aware of how the landscape changes around them, the way the air moves differently through canyon walls, the way sound carries and echoes in the vast spaces of the desert. This is a world she never imagined, vast and wild, and somehow more honest than the tight, fearful community of Copper Ridge. Behind them, the boundary stones grow smaller until they disappear entirely, and ahead lies territory that belongs to neither the world she knew nor the world she was given to, but to something altogether new. The cabin emerges from the landscape like something that grew there rather than being built, its walls of weathered pine and adobe blending into the rocky hillside, as if the earth itself had decided to offer shelter. Starwalker's hooves find the narrow path that leads to this hidden place, and Sarah Beth can smell the change in the air, pine sap, wood smoke, and something green that speaks of water nearby. This is home, Joseph says simply as he helps her down from the horse. The word carries weight she had not expected, Home, in her experience, was a place you were tolerated rather than welcomed, a roof over your head earned through the charity of others. But the way Joseph says it suggests something different, something that belongs to the person who claims it rather than the other way around. She stands still while he tends to Starwalker, letting her other senses map this new territory. The cabin sits in a sheltered canyon, protected from the worst of the desert winds. She can hear water moving over stones somewhere nearby, and the air carries the scent of sage and juniper, along with something else, the lingering aroma of recently cooked food. There is a stream that runs year-round, Joseph tells her as he approaches. 20 steps to the east, marked by a path of smooth stones. The privy is behind the cabin, 30 steps to the west. There is a rope strung between 2 posts to guide you. His practical attention to her needs surprises her. In Copper Ridge, people had either ignored her limitations or treated them as insurmountable obstacles. Joseph speaks of them as simple facts that require simple solutions. "Come," he says, taking her arm gently. "I will show you the inside." The cabin door opens with a soft creak, and she steps into a space that feels larger than she expected. The air inside is warm but not stifling, scented with pine pitch and something else she cannot identify. Leather, perhaps, and herbs hanging to dry. The fireplace is directly ahead, Joseph explains, guiding her through the room. 3 steps, then the hearth. To your left, a table and 2 chairs. To your right, my sleeping area. I have made a place for you near the window where the morning sun will warm you. She can hear him moving around the room and gradually becomes aware of other sounds. The soft settling of wood, the whisper of wind through chinks in the walls, the distant murmur of the stream. It is so different from the boarding house in Copper Ridge, where every sound was filtered through thin walls and shared spaces. Here, the silence between sounds feels clean and uncluttered. "Are you hungry?" Joseph asks. Sarah Beth realizes she has not eaten since the night before, but admitting hunger feels like admitting need, and she has spent years learning to minimize her needs. "A little," she says carefully. She hears him moving around what must be a cooking area, the soft sounds of preparation. Soon the cabin fills with the aroma of meat cooking over the fire, and her stomach responds with an audible growl that makes her cheeks burn with embarrassment. "When did you last eat meat that was not salted or dried?" Joseph asks, and she can hear something like amusement in his voice. I don't remember," she admits. "Then tonight you will remember," he says. As the food cooks, he shows her around the cabin with patient thoroughness. Her sleeping area consists of a raised platform covered with thick blankets and furs, positioned near a window that catches the eastern light. There is a trunk for her belongings and nearby a wash basin on a stand. "The basin is always filled with fresh water," Joseph explains. "I fetch it each morning from the stream." The meal, when it comes, is unlike anything she has tasted in years. Fresh venison cooked over the open fire, seasoned with herbs she cannot identify, wild onions roasted until they are sweet and tender, some kind of root vegetable that tastes nutty and filling, and bread, actual bread, not the hardtack she has grown accustomed to, but soft, warm bread that must have been baked that very day. "You were expecting me," she says, suddenly understanding. "I was told you would come today," Joseph confirms, "but I was not told what to expect." They eat in comfortable silence, and Sarah Beth finds herself relaxing in a way she had not expected. There is no conversation required here, no need to prove herself worthy of the food she is eating. Joseph seems content to let the meal speak for itself. After they have eaten, he shows her the path to the stream, counting out the steps and describing the landmarks she can use to find her way. The water is cold and clear, running over smooth stones that have been polished by countless years of flow. "Tomorrow I will teach you to catch fish," Joseph says. The The stream provides if you know how to ask. That first night, lying on the soft furs in her sleeping area, Sarah Beth listens to the sounds of the canyon settling into darkness. Joseph moves quietly around the cabin, banking the fire for the night, checking that the door is secure. When he finally settles into his own sleeping area, the cabin falls into a silence that is nothing like the tense quiet of Copper Ridge. But in the distance, carried on the night wind, she can hear other sounds. Voices, speaking in a language she does not understand. The soft nickering of horses, the sound of footsteps moving carefully through the darkness beyond the cabin walls. "Joseph," she whispers. "I hear them too," he replies quietly. "They are curious about you. Some are angry that I have brought a white woman to this place. Others wonder if you might be a spy sent by your people to learn our ways." "What do you think?" she asks. There is a long pause before he answers. "I think you are a woman who has been thrown away by people who could not see your value. And I think that sometimes what one people discards, another people can treasure." The sounds outside continue for perhaps an hour before fading away, leaving only the natural night sounds of the canyon. Sarah Beth lies awake long after Joseph's breathing settles into the rhythm of sleep, thinking about his words and wondering what tomorrow will bring. In the darkness, she can still taste the memory of fresh bread and properly seasoned meat. She can still feel the warmth of the cabin around her and the softness of the furs beneath her body. For the first time in 3 years, she falls asleep without hunger gnawing at her belly or fear whispering in her ear. But even in sleep, she remains aware of the voices that spoke in the darkness and the knowledge that her presence here has created ripples that will continue to spread in ways she cannot yet imagine. The night air carries promises and threats in equal measure, and morning will reveal which ones are stronger. The first 3 weeks pass like seasons in fast motion, each day bringing new understanding and unexpected challenges. Sarah Beth learns the rhythm of canyon life, the way morning light creeps across the eastern wall, warming the air in gradual stages. The way afternoon winds carry the scent of distant rain that may or may not arrive. The way evening settles into the rocky spaces with a silence so complete it feels sacred. Joseph teaches her practical skills with the patience of someone who understands that survival depends on knowledge shared rather than hoarded. She learns to feel her way along the rope, guide to the stream, to distinguish the sound of fresh water from the stagnant pools that form after storms, to catch the small fish that dart through the shallows by feeling for the vibrations they create in the water. Her hands, soft from years of indoor living, begin to toughen and grow skilled. She learns to tend the fire, adding fuel in the precise amounts that Joseph demonstrates, maintaining the steady heat needed for cooking without wasting the wood that must be gathered with careful effort. She learns to recognize edible plants by touch and smell, to prepare the wild onions and desert roots that supplement their diet of fish and occasional game. But with each passing day, the tensions outside their peaceful canyon grow more apparent. Voices in the darkness become more frequent, and sometimes she can hear the sound of horses moving restlessly beyond the cabin walls. During the day, when Joseph goes out to hunt or gather supplies, she often hears footsteps approaching the cabin, stopping just outside the range of conversation, watching and waiting before melting back into the landscape. "They are testing," Joseph explains one evening as they share a meal of roasted rabbit and wild greens. "Some believe you will bring soldiers from Copper Ridge, that this is a trick to learn our movements and hiding places. Others think I have dishonored myself by taking a woman who was thrown away by her own people." "And what do you believe?" Sarah Beth asks, though she fears the answer. "I believe that fear makes people see enemies where they might find allies," Joseph says. "But I also understand their caution. Your people and mine have not been at peace for long, and peace built on treaties can be broken as easily as it was made. That night, Sarah Beth lies awake, listening to the sounds beyond the cabin walls and thinking about the precarious nature of their situation. She has begun to feel at home in this place, to take comfort in the daily routines she shares with Joseph, but she is also aware that their sanctuary exists at the sufferance of people who have good reason to distrust her presence. The crisis comes on a Wednesday morning, 3 weeks after her arrival, when the sound of approaching hoofbeats breaks the usual morning quiet. But these are not the careful, almost silent movements of Apache horses. These hoofbeats are heavy and unsubtle, announcing their approach with the arrogance of people who believe they have nothing to fear. "Riders from Copper Ridge," Joseph says quietly, moving to the window. 4 men, heavily armed. Sarah Beth's heart hammers against her ribs as she recognizes the voices calling from beyond the cabin walls. Marshal Tucker, Deputy Morrison, and 2 others she cannot identify. They have come, as she always knew they would, to check on their investment, and possibly to reclaim it if the arrangement is not working to their satisfaction. "Running Bear," Tucker's voice booms across the canyon. "We've come to see how you're getting along with our gift." Joseph steps outside, and Sarah Beth can hear his boots on the wooden porch, the soft creak of the boards under his weight. "Marshal Tucker," he says, his voice carrying neither welcome nor hostility, "you are far from Copper Ridge." "Just checking on our agreement," Tucker replies, and Sarah Beth can hear the false heartiness in his tone, making sure the woman is adjusting properly. "She is learning," Joseph says simply. "Learning what? How to be a proper squaw." This from Deputy Morrison, and the contempt in his voice makes Sarah Beth's cheeks burn with shame and anger. "She is learning to fish, to gather plants, to tend a fire," Joseph replies evenly. "Skills that keep people alive in this country." "Well, we'll just have a look at her, make sure she's not causing you any trouble," Tucker says, and Sarah Beth can hear the men dismounting. The cabin door opens, and Joseph enters, followed by the 4 men from Copper Ridge. The space that had felt spacious and welcoming suddenly feels cramped and invaded. Sarah Beth stands beside the fireplace, her hands folded in front of her, trying to project calm she does not feel. "My God," says one of the men she doesn't recognize. "Look at her, she's filled out some. Indian cooking must agree with her." It's true. The steady diet of fresh meat and wild vegetables, the daily physical activity, the absence of constant stress have all worked changes in her body. She feels stronger, healthier, more substantial than she has in years. But the way the man says it makes it sound like an accusation. "She appears to be surviving," Tucker says, walking a slow circle around her as if inspecting livestock. "But the question is, what's she contributing? We didn't give her to you to be a burden, Running Bear." "She contributes," Joseph says, and there is something in his tone that makes the air in the cabin feel charged with electricity. "How's that?" Morrison demands. "What can a blind woman do that's worth the trouble of keeping her?" It is then that the sound comes from outside. A child's voice, high and clear, calling out in Apache. Joseph moves quickly to the window, and Sarah Beth can hear his sharp intake of breath. "What is it?" Tucker demands. "A child," Joseph says, "lost in the canyon, separated from her family during yesterday's storm." The voice calls again, closer now, but clearly distressed. Sarah Beth can hear the fear in it, the exhaustion of someone who has been wandering for hours without finding help. "Not our problem," Tucker says dismissively. "Indian kid, Indian problem." But Sarah Beth is already moving, following the sound of the child's voice with uncertainty that surprises everyone, including herself. She steps outside onto the porch, then down the wooden steps, following the rope guide toward the stream but angling off in the direction of the crying voice. "She's heading for the drop-off," Joseph says urgently. "There's a 20-foot cliff on that side of the stream." The child's voice comes again, and this time Sarah Beth can tell exactly where it is, below them, trapped on a ledge, part-way down the cliff face. Without hesitation, she drops to her knees at the edge, feeling carefully along the rock face until she finds handholds. "What the hell is she doing?" Morrison demands. But Joseph understands. "She can hear exactly where the child is," he says, "and she knows how to move safely in the dark." Sarah Beth begins to work her way down the cliff face, her hands and feet finding purchase on rocks that Joseph would have difficulty seeing in the shadowy depths below. The child's voice guides her, and she responds in the few Apache words Joseph has taught her, reassuring sounds that seem to calm the frightened crying. When she reaches the ledge, she finds a girl of perhaps 8 years old, scratched and scared, but not seriously injured. With careful patience, Sarah Beth helps the child climb onto her back, then begins the difficult ascent back to safety. By the time they reach the top, a crowd has gathered. The child's family has arrived, along with several other Apache who had been searching through the night. The reunion is emotional, the child's parents weeping with relief as they hold their daughter close. But what happens next transforms the moment from rescue to revelation. The child's grandmother, an elderly Apache woman with silver hair and hands gnarled by arthritis, approaches Sarah Beth with slow dignity. She says the blind woman sees with her heart, Joseph translates, as the grandmother speaks in rapid Apache. She says anyone who would risk themselves for a lost child, even a child not of their own people, carries medicine that can heal old wounds. The grandmother reaches out and takes Sarah Beth's hands in hers, speaking again in Apache while looking directly into her sightless eyes. She asks if you will teach her granddaughter to listen the way you listen, Joseph continues, to hear what others cannot hear. She says this is a gift that should be shared. As the crowd of Apache gradually disperses, taking the rescued child home, the men from Copper Ridge stand in uncomfortable silence. Whatever they had expected to find in the canyon, it was not this. A blind woman who moved with confidence in unfamiliar terrain, who risked herself for a stranger's child, who was being offered a place of honor in a community that had initially viewed her with suspicion. Marshal Tucker clears his throat. "Well," he says finally, "looks like you're managing just fine out here, Running Bear. We'll be heading back to town now." The men mount their horses and ride away without another word, leaving Sarah Beth and Joseph standing together in the sudden quiet of the canyon. Around them, the afternoon light slants through the pine trees, and the stream continues its eternal murmur over smooth stones. "The grandmother's name is Elena Two Horses," Joseph says quietly. "She is the keeper of stories for our people, the one who decides which tales are worth preserving. She has asked you to teach her granddaughter, but she has also offered to teach you. She says there are things you need to know if you are going to live among us as family rather than as a stranger." Sarah Beth looks toward the sound of his voice, understanding that something fundamental has shifted in the canyon today. The child she rescued will grow up with a story about the blind white woman who heard her cries and climbed down into darkness to bring her home. And she, Sarah Beth Morrison, will learn what it means to be more than just a woman who was thrown away. She will learn what it means to be chosen. Summer deepens into autumn, and the canyon fills with the rustle of changing leaves and the urgent business of preparation for winter. Sarah Beth's days now include more than just learning to survive. She has become part of the intricate web of relationships that sustain the small Apache community hidden in these protective walls. 3 times a week, Elena Two Horses arrives at the cabin with her granddaughter, Little Sparrow, a bright-eyed girl of 8 who has become Sarah Beth's most eager student. Together, they practice the art of listening, not just hearing sounds, but understanding their meaning, their distance, their urgency or calm. "Close your eyes, Little Sparrow," Sarah Beth instructs in her growing vocabulary of Apache words mixed with English. Tell me what the birds are saying. The child squeezes her eyes shut, her face scrunched in concentration. The blue jay in the pine tree. He's warning about something. The sound is sharp, not the lazy sound of a bird who feels safe. Good. What else? There are horses coming, still far away but moving fast. The hoofbeats have space between them, like the horses are running instead of walking. Elena, two horses, nods approvingly. In return for these lessons in careful listening, the grandmother teaches Sarah Beth the deeper skills of desert survival, which plants provide medicine for fever, how to weave baskets from pine needles, and willow shoots, how to preserve meat for the lean months when game becomes scarce. But the most profound changes happen in the quiet hours she shares with Joseph. Their relationship has evolved from the careful politeness of strangers into something deeper and more complex. They have learned each other's rhythms, the way he moves around the cabin in the early morning, the way she hums softly while preparing their evening meal, the way they can share long silences without discomfort. On this particular evening, as they sit beside the stream, listening to the water move over stones, Joseph speaks of things he has never shared with anyone. My first wife's name was Dancing Water, he says quietly. She loved to sing while she worked, and our children would try to sing along, little voices that could never quite catch the melody. Sarah Beth reaches over and finds his hand, squeezing gently to let him know she is listening. When the spotted sickness came, it took them in 3 days. First the baby, then our son, then Dancing Water. I buried them on the hill overlooking this canyon, and I thought I would follow them soon. For 2 years, I wanted to die. What changed? Sarah Beth asks softly. Time. And understanding that grief shared becomes manageable, while grief hoarded grows stronger than the person carrying it. He turns toward her, though she cannot see his face. I stopped wanting to die, but I had also stopped wanting to live. I just existed. And now I wake up in the morning and think about the day ahead instead of the days behind. I make plans for next spring, next winter. I wonder what little sparrow will learn this week, whether Elena's arthritis will improve with the medicine you helped her gather. I think about you learning to weave baskets, about teaching you to track deer sign when the snow comes. These words settle between them like seeds planted in fertile ground. Sarah Beth understands that Joseph is telling her about more than his past. He is offering her a glimpse of their future together, if she wants it. In Copper Ridge, she says, I spent every day trying to make myself smaller, quieter, less of a burden. I apologized for taking up space, for needing help, for being alive. Here, with you, with Elena and Little Sparrow and the others, I feel like I'm expanding instead of shrinking, like I'm becoming more than I ever was before. You were always more than they could see, Joseph says. You just needed space to grow. Their conversation is interrupted by the sound of approaching horses, moving fast, as Little Sparrow had predicted. But these are not the heavy, clumsy mounts of Copper Ridge riders. These are Apache horses, and the urgency of their approach suggests trouble. 3 riders enter the canyon, their horses lathered with sweat and breathing hard. Joseph rises immediately, recognizing the lead rider as Tom stands tall, one of the younger warriors who serves as a scout for threats from both white settlements and hostile Apache bands. The conversation that follows is rapid Apache, too fast for Sarah Beth to follow with her limited vocabulary, but she can hear the tension in the voices, the undertone of anger and fear that needs no translation. What is it? She asks when the conversation pauses. Soldiers, Joseph says grimly. A patrol from Fort Bowie, riding hard toward the Copper Ridge area. Tom says they're looking for someone, a white woman, who was supposedly kidnapped by Apache raiders. Sarah Beth's blood turns to ice. They think I was kidnapped? Worse, Joseph continues as Tom speaks again. Someone in Copper Ridge has told them that I killed Marshal Tucker and his men, that I took you by force and murdered anyone who tried to stop me. The lie is so outrageous that for a moment Sarah Beth cannot process it. Then the implications hit her like a physical blow. But Tucker and the others rode away unharmed. We all saw them leave. Truth matters less than what people choose to believe, Joseph says bitterly. And some people will always choose to believe the worst about Apache, especially when it gives them an excuse to do what they wanted to do anyway. Tom continues his report, and Joseph translates grimly. The soldiers are carrying orders to search every Apache camp within 50 miles of Copper Ridge. They have permission to use force if they encounter resistance. They expect to find you tied up somewhere, beaten and abused, ready to testify against your Apache captors. How long before they reach us? Sarah Beth asks. 2 days, maybe 3 if they stop to search other camps first. The 3 riders prepare to leave to carry the warning to other Apache families who might be in the path of the soldier patrol. But before they go, Tom speaks directly to Sarah Beth in careful English. You could go back, he says. Tell the soldiers the truth, that you came here by choice, that you were never harmed. It might stop the trouble. Sarah Beth considers this for a long moment. Going back to Copper Ridge would mean returning to a life of dependence and barely disguised contempt. It would mean abandoning the skills she has learned, the relationships she has built, the sense of purpose she has discovered. It would mean leaving Joseph, but staying might mean bringing violence to people who have welcomed her as family. No, she says finally, going back would only confirm their belief that Apache cannot be trusted. They would say, I was forced to lie, that I had been threatened or beaten into defending my captors. My testimony would mean nothing, because they have already decided what truth they want to hear. That night, as the canyon settles into an uneasy quiet, Sarah Beth and Joseph make their preparations. If the soldiers come, they will find a woman who chose her path freely, who will stand beside the man she has come to love and the community that has given her a place to belong. Elena Two Horses arrives before dawn, bringing Little Sparrow and several other women. They work quickly and quietly, helping to cache supplies in hiding places throughout the canyon, preparing for the possibility that the cabin might need to be abandoned. Grandmother asks if you are afraid. Little Sparrow translates as Elena speaks. Sarah Beth considers the question carefully. Tell her I am afraid of losing what I have found here, but I am not afraid of fighting to keep it. The old woman nods approvingly and speaks again. She says fear is a good counselor, but a bad master, Little Sparrow translates. She says you have learned to listen with your heart, and hearts that listen carefully are rarely wrong about what is worth protecting. And as the sun rises over the canyon walls, Sarah Beth stands beside the stream with Joseph, listening to the water move over stones that have been here longer than any human memory. Tomorrow or the next day, soldiers will ride into their peaceful world carrying lies and threats, and the arrogance of people who believe might makes right. But today, in this moment, Sarah Beth Morrison knows exactly who she is and where she belongs. She is no longer the unwanted burden from Copper Ridge or the gift thrown away to buy temporary peace. She's a woman who climbs down cliff faces to rescue lost children, who teaches young girls to hear the world's secrets, who has found love in the most unlikely place, and will defend it with everything she has learned about courage, survival, and the power of choosing your own truth over the stories others tell about you. The soldiers arrive at midday on the 3rd day. Their approach announced by the nervous whinnying of horses unused to the narrow canyon paths and the sharp commands of men who expect the landscape to bend to their will rather than learning to move with it. Sarah Beth stands on the cabin porch beside Joseph, her hand resting lightly on his arm. She has spent the morning listening to the sounds of preparation throughout the canyon, Voices speaking in urgent whispers, the soft movement of people taking positions among the rocks, the careful loading of rifles and drawing of bowstrings. The Apache are ready for war if war is forced upon them, but they are also prepared to let truth speak first. 12 soldiers, Joseph murmurs as the patrol comes into view, led by Captain Richardson from Fort Bowie. I know him. He's not unreasonable, but he follows orders without question. Captain Richardson rides at the head of his column, a man in his 40s with graying hair and the weathered face of someone who has spent years in the Arizona Territory. Behind him, 11 younger soldiers sit their horses with the nervous energy of men who have been told they are riding into hostile territory to rescue a captive woman from savage kidnappers. Joseph Running Bear, OD Captain Richardson calls out as his patrol reaches the cabin. By order of the territorial governor, I'm here to investigate reports of a kidnapped white woman. You will surrender the captive immediately and submit to arrest for murder and abduction. Joseph steps forward, his hands visible and empty. Captain Richardson, I know you to be a fair man. Will you listen to what the woman herself has to say? If she hasn't been beaten into submission, yes. But I'll warn you. We have witnesses who saw you kill Marshal Tucker and his men. This canyon is surrounded, Running Bear. There's no escape if you've done what they say you've done. Sarah Beth moves past Joseph to the front of the porch, and she can hear the ripple of surprise that moves through the soldiers. Whatever they expected to find, it was not a woman who moved with confidence, whose face showed no signs of abuse, whose posture spoke of strength rather than cowering fear. Captain, she says, her voice carrying clearly across the space between them, I am Sarah Beth Morrison. I was not kidnapped, and no one has been murdered. Marshal Tucker and his men left this canyon unharmed 3 weeks ago after satisfying themselves that I was well cared for. That's impossible, says a younger voice from among the soldiers. Deputy Morrison himself told us what happened. He saw the bodies. Sarah Beth's heart sinks as she recognizes the voice. Tommy Morrison, her cousin's son, barely 18 and eager to prove himself as a soldier. The family resemblance is clear in his tone, the same willingness to believe the worst about people they consider beneath them. Tommy, she says gently, your father and Marshal Tucker rode away from here without a scratch on them. I heard their horses, heard their voices as they left. Whatever they told you happened here, it was a lie. You're defending your captors, Tommy insists. Uncle said the Apache would force you to say that they'd threaten to kill you if you told the truth. Captain Richardson dismounts and approaches the porch, studying Sarah Beth with careful attention. You say you came here willingly. I was brought here as part of an agreement between Copper Ridge and Joseph Running Bear. Your people wanted peace, and they thought giving him a wife would ensure it. I had no choice in that decision, but I have chosen to stay. And Running Bear, how has he treated you? Sarah Beth feels Joseph's presence beside her, solid and reassuring. He has treated me with more kindness and respect than I ever received in Copper Ridge. He has taught me to survive in this country, and he has protected me from those who would do me harm. If that makes him guilty of something, then I pray more. Men would be guilty of the same crime. The captain walks a slow circle around the porch, taking in details that speak louder than words. The cabin is well maintained, with obvious signs of two people living together comfortably. Sarah Beth's clothing is clean and well fitted, her face healthy and unafraid. There are no chains, no bars on the windows, no signs of captivity or abuse. These are serious accusations, Miss Morrison, Captain Richardson says finally. If what you say is true, then someone has lied to the territorial government and caused a major military operation based on false information. With respect, Captain, Joseph speaks for the first time since the initial exchange. Why would Marshal Tucker lie about something like this? Before the captain can answer, the sound of approaching hoofbeats draws everyone's attention. A single rider enters the canyon, moving fast, and Sarah Beth recognizes the particular rhythm of Starwalkers. Gait. It is Tom Stands Tall, returning from a scouting mission with news that will change everything. Tom speaks rapidly in Apache, and Joseph's sharp intake of breath tells Sarah Beth that the news is significant. "What is it?" she asks. "Tom has been watching Copper Ridge," Joseph says grimly. "Marshal Tucker is very much alive and has been seen drinking in the saloon every night since he returned from visiting us. Deputy Morrison is also alive and well, but they have been telling everyone that we killed them and that Tom witnessed the murders from hiding." Captain Richardson's face darkens as he realizes the implications. "Are you telling me that Tucker and Morrison are claiming to be dead?" "Not dead," Joseph clarifies. "They are saying their spirits spoke to people in town, warning them of the Apache threat. It's a way to create fear and justify taking action against my people without having to explain why they were never actually harmed." The absurdity of the situation hangs in the air, like smoke from a wet fire. Captain Richardson removes his hat and runs his hand through his hair, the gesture of a man realizing he has been made a fool of. "Tommy," Sarah Beth calls to her young cousin, "do you really believe that your father's ghost came back to warn the town about Apache raiders? Or is it more likely that he is alive and well and spinning tales to justify his fear and prejudice?" The young soldier's face flushes red, caught between family loyalty and growing awareness that he has been used. He said he barely escaped, that they left him for dead. "Then ride back to Copper Ridge," Sarah Beth challenges. "Walk into the saloon and see if your dead father offers to buy you a drink." It is Elena Two Horses who breaks the tense silence that follows. The grandmother emerges from behind the cabin, moving with the dignity of someone who has lived long enough to see every variety of human foolishness. She speaks directly to Captain Richardson in careful but clear English. "Captain, I am Eleanor Two Horses, grandmother to this band. I have seen 70 winters in this land, and I have watched white soldiers and Apache warriors make peace and war many times. Today, I offer you a truth that costs nothing but pride. The woman you came to rescue has become the teacher of our children and the keeper of skills that help us all survive. She was given to us as a burden, but she has made herself into a gift. Any man who would take her from this place by force commits a crime against not just her, but against the children she teaches and the people she serves." Little Sparrow appears at her grandmother's side, looking up at the mounted soldiers with curious eyes rather than fear. In her arms, she carries a basket woven from pine needles and decorated with small stones from the stream, one of the first pieces Sarah Beth successfully completed under Elena's patient guidance. "The blind woman made this," Little Sparrow says in English, holding up the basket. "She taught me to listen for the birds that warn of storms, and I taught her to weave grass that will not break. Grandmother says this is how people become family, by teaching each other to be stronger." Captain Richardson looks from the child to Sarah Beth to Joseph, seeing not the scene of crime and captivity he expected, but something else entirely, a functioning community where people of different backgrounds have found ways to support and strengthen each other. "Miss Morrison," he says finally, "if I ride away from here and report that you are here by choice, living freely and well cared for, will you stand by that statement if questioned by territorial authorities?" "I will, Captain. And I will also stand by the statement that Joseph Running Bear is a man of honor who has committed no crime except giving shelter to someone who needed it." The captain mounts his horse and signals his men to prepare for departure. "Tommy," he says to the young soldier, "when we get back to Fort Bowie, you're going to write a very detailed report about what we found here. And then you're going to think carefully about who benefits when lies are allowed to stand as truth." As the patrol rides away, Sarah Beth remains on the porch with Joseph, listening to the sounds of their departure until even the dust settles back to earth. Around them, the canyon begins to return to its natural rhythms, the hidden Apache emerging from their defensive positions, children's voices once again echoing from the stream. "What happens now?" Sarah Beth asks. "Now we continue building what we started," Joseph replies. "Elena wants to teach you the old stories that keep our history alive. Little Sparrow wants to learn more about reading the sounds that travel on the wind. Winter is coming, and there is wood to gather, food to preserve, shelter to strengthen." That evening, as the sun sets behind the canyon walls, Sarah Beth sits beside the stream with a group of Apache children, teaching them to distinguish between the sound of water moving over different types of stone. Elena, Two Horses, sits nearby, weaving a new basket and humming an old song that seems to blend with the murmur of the current. Joseph emerges from the cabin, carrying a pot of stew made from the day's hunting, and the aroma draws everyone toward the warmth of the fire that burns in front of their home. As they share the meal, passing bowls and speaking in the mixture of Apache and English that has become their common language, Sarah Beth realizes that she is witnessing something remarkable: the birth of a new kind of family, one built not on blood or tradition, but on choice, mutual respect, and the understanding that strength comes from teaching each other to survive and thrive. Later, as the fire burns down to glowing embers and the children are called home by their parents, Sarah Beth and Joseph sit together in comfortable silence. Above them, stars appear in the clear desert sky, and the canyon settles into the deep quiet that comes only to places where people feel safe. "Do you ever miss Copper Ridge?" Joseph asks. Sarah Beth considers the question, thinking of the boarding house room that had been her prison, the whispered conversations about her uselessness, the daily reminders that she existed at the sufferance of people who saw her as a burden to be endured. "I miss the woman I thought I had to be there," she says finally. "The one who apologized for taking up space, who tried to make herself invisible. I miss her sometimes because being her was easier than learning to be who I really am. And who are you really? I'm a woman who teaches children to listen with their hearts. I'm a wife who has learned that love is not about being needed, but about choosing to build something together that neither person could create alone. I'm a member of a community that values what I can contribute instead of counting what I cannot do." Joseph takes her hand, and they sit together listening to the night sounds of the canyon. The soft call of an owl, the rustle of small animals in the brush, the eternal whisper of water over stone. These are the sounds of home, of a place where Sarah Beth Morrison has finally learned the difference between being thrown away and being chosen, between surviving and truly living. In the distance, a child's laughter echoes from one of the other families, and Sarah Beth smiles, knowing that tomorrow little Sparrow will come for her lesson, that Elena will arrive with a new skill to share, that Joseph will wake beside her, and they will face whatever the day brings as partners in the ongoing work of building a life that honors both their past struggles and their present joy. The story that began with a woman being offered as a token of appeasement has become something no one expected, a tale of transformation, community, and the radical idea that every person, regardless of what others see as their limitations, carries within them the capacity to teach, to learn, to love, and to create meaning in a world that too often mistakes strength for cruelty and worth for usefulness. As the embers of the fire finally fade to ash, Sarah Beth Morrison falls asleep in the arms of the man who saw her value when no one else could, surrounded by the sounds of a community that has taught her the most important lesson of all, that home is not where you come from, but where you choose to build something beautiful with the people who see you clearly and love you anyway. Like the stars that watched over Sarah Beth's transformation in that Arizona canyon, every one of us carries the potential to find our true home and Purpose, often in the most unexpected places. If this story of courage, love, and second chances moved you, consider sharing it with others who might need to hear that being thrown away by some people simply means you haven't yet found the ones who will treasure you. Leave a comment about a time when you discovered strength you didn't know you had, or when someone saw value in you that others missed. And if you enjoyed this journey from rejection to redemption, subscribe to join us for more stories that remind us that every ending can become a new beginning, and every person has the power to choose their own truth over the stories others tell about them.